leave it to you.
Thank you
please.
so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Wasn't quite expecting my CV to be front and centre there, but thank you. So thank you for welcome to this edition of the Directors Circle, of course brought to you by the Friends of the Court Theatre. As Annie said, my name is Emma Newborn and I'm going to be the MC for this evening. We will have a moment for questions and things sort of towards the end. However, if there is a question that is absolutely burning and on the tip of your tongue, please put your hand up and we'll see. So, Dan Bain, the person sitting here on my left, of course, no stranger. To you, he has not only a director, but a writer, an actor, an improviser, sound designer, artistic director of the Court Jesters, and associate director of the Court Theatre itself. He's co-created cult improv sensations Perfect Storm and Improv Seduction, and is the creator of the incredibly popular sleep aid podcast, Dan Bain's Sleepy Time Mumbles. Theatre writing credits include Ivy Black, Ex-Murder Girl, and The Light in the Sky, silent children's shows, A Paint Box of Clowns, Why Are My Parents So Boring, and Cat vs. Dog. High School Musical, The Invisibles with Luke DeSoma, and annual versions of A Christmas Carol. His court theatre directing credits include Murder on the Orient Express, Titus Andronicus, Stephen King's Misery, Ideation, and The Arsonists. His acting credits here include Sir Toby Belch in Twelfth Night, of course, last year, Hamlet in Hamlet the Video Game, Louis in The Lady Killers, Tom Snout in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Danny Lieberman in Backstage, and innumerable characters in the Court Theatre Kids shows. 2024 saw him take home the Gong for Best New Zealand Play, Best Adaptation, and Best South Island Play for his version of The Odyssey. He is currently serving as the artistic and programming director of Little Andromeda and is the head of the Malthouse Drama School. He is, of course, currently directing Let the Right One In for the upcoming season here in the Stewart Family Theatre, and somewhere in between all that, he's managed to find time to sit down with us today. So, another please warm round of applause for Dan. And I can tell you that is the abridged version of his CV. So, Dan, a lot of hats.
Yeah, no, I'm a hat wearer from way back. I've always approached the arts career as being what is immediately within reach, and then kind of grabbed that and then leveraged onto the next thing, which is why I've kind of somehow managed to cobble together some sort of sense of a career by jumping from, oh, I could probably do that. Oh, what? People are doing that. Oh, you get paid to do that? I could do that. So it's very much been a career of seeing something within grasp and kind of going for it, which is why I have such a generalist kind of CV, but I think that, I guess the purpose that we're all here this evening is that the director is the skill set that pulls on all of those facets. So the ability to understand the process of being an actor in a show, of understanding how sound design works, the fact that I've kind of come up into directing position as a writer, a performer, through an apprenticeship, kind of learn your skills on the job way rather than just kind of being like, I should be in charge. So I think I have a good kind of, I think directing is where I'm probably at my best.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And how do they... Yeah, I guess, I mean, you pretty much answered that, is how do those disciplines sort of fuel each other?
I until maybe the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I had a principle as a director that I would never ask an actor to do something that I couldn't do myself, or that I wouldn't do myself on stage. And that was quite easy to maintain for a while, because I was young and quite fit, and I would do it. Like, the easiest way to get someone else to do a stunt is to do it yourself. I've got a fight director on this show. Yeah, but I guess that's kind of part of it, is that I because I've been an actor, performer, I know I've got a good vocabulary for how to kind of speak to them, how to get what I'm after out of them without kind of just trying to puppeteer. I'm not bad at kind of just prodding a little bit and that being enough to kind of get what I'm after. The same with the various kind of design aspects. I kind of understand a lot of the mechanics of how sound for a theatre operates, how it works, what the limitations of the software and that sort of things are. So I know the right questions to ask in those kind of situations. Yeah. And that, yeah, I think that understanding of kind of everything allows me to kind of synergize production quite well. That's a dreadful word, but yeah, to make it cohesive. That's a better one.
Yeah. So it feels like quite a natural place to find yourself then in role of director, like a natural, like a clear sort of progression of where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I'm better at it than at acting. I'm all right, but I've got a niche. Like there's not much I can do outside of this. When you're a character actor, it's like you better hope that your character turns up in a show, or you're not in with a chance. Yeah, I think while I have a knack for, I mean, I don't even think I'm an actor. I think I'm an entertainer. I live in the world of like rather than if that makes sense.
Because you started in clown school.
Yeah. My background is clown. My background is circus. That's where my training came from. And then the first chunk of my career was working for circuses and street performance. So I spent maybe 7 years touring globally, doing festivals, and just turning up on street corners in busy metropolitan centres the world around, and going, "Look at me." And seeing what would kind of come of that. So yeah, I have a very kind of working class kind of lowbrow approach to the work that I do in here, to art, to theatre. It all kind of is filtered through a lens of what I learnt on the street, which is, if you are boring for more than 20 seconds, the audience will leave. Yeah. And it's such a thrill to move indoors when you've already got their money. you get a degree of leeway where you can afford to be a little subtle. But yeah, all of my work goes through a lens of, just out of curiosity, Dan, are you being a bit boring right now? Is this a bit boring? Is there a way to make it more interesting? Would people be leaving if they had the opportunity? And so all of my work, whether it's in stand-up, which also has reworked that, like hones that skill, don't be boring. Improv, which hones that skill. All of those things are feeding into the work that I bring, and the kind of energy that I try to engender in my casts and my productions when I'm working in a more formal environment where there is the opportunity for what I call the eyebrow rather than the hammer. In terms of kind of subtlety and finesse, You get a bit of that, but I always, I'm always tempted to reach for the hammer.
Apparently, because I was looking at your CV, and Let the Right One In is of course a horror, for those of you who don't know. And it's certainly not the first horror that you've directed. I was some of the credits titles in there are like Jekyll and Hyde, Coffin Ship, Stephen King's Misery, Titus Andronicus, all works that have fear or a psychological tension at their centre. So what draws you to material like this? And then how does that intersect with your comedy clown performer background?
Yeah. I mean, I've just always quite been, I don't know, this is going to sound weird. I've always been quite into violence. Like, I think there's nothing more frightening in real life than guns, and I think there's nothing cooler in a film than guns. I think guns are fucking cool, excuse my language, on screen, and I think in real life they're frightening, and I think I've always been kind of intrigued by violence in a safe way that lets us kind of experience violence without actually having it happen to us or have it inflicted upon us or observe it in our daily life, which is kind of horrible and traumatic and dreadful, but it is part of the world that we find ourselves in, and there's something I think useful in kind of in testing that idea and testing it in a safe kind of controlled way, whether that's violence or whether it's fear, or whether it's feeling uncomfortable, because I think we spend our lives desperately trying to avoid kind of like that is kind of one of our big objectives: avoid pain, find comfort, follow these kind of things, which I mean, great, but I like we live in a very textured kind of lives and a textured world, and I think it's useful and interesting to kind of to test ourselves against these things. So I don't know, that's a smart way to be like, when I was a kid I liked fighting with sticks. But how does it collide with comedy? It's kind of a truism. There's nothing particularly new to it, but comedy and horror work on the same principle. They establish tension, they hold tension, and then they release tension. It's the same skill set. The comic does it by establishing something uncomfortable or puzzling, and then they release the tension by either revealing the connection between them or putting a surprising twist on it to release the tension. And the way that we release that as people is generally, if they've done a good job, we laugh. And the practitioner of horror builds tension through kind of through what they hide, through what they choose to reveal, through sound choices, through staging, etc. And then eventually they either do not release it by subverting the tension, and so you just have to sit with that tension with no release, which is a very valid choice, or they release the tension through some action of or of some act of violence that kind of completes that kind of run. So they work on the same kind of technique and skill set. The other thing I would say that I only really discovered in the last year, maybe, I directed a piece called Coffin Ship for Little Andromeda over the way, which is a new piece of horror. It was set on a coffin ship, which was the ships that they sent from England to Van Diemen's Land, so Australia, for condemned prisoners, and they would live in the bilge of these ships was a kind of nightmare situation, and this piece posited what if there was a monster in that ship as well, and no spoilers, but it killed them. And this is the thing I discovered on that project, was what I'm good at that I hadn't thought about was, because I direct comedy a lot as well, that's my other thing, is I can tell when there might be a laugh. Like, I'm quite good at being like, that might be accidentally funny, because an audience for live horror, for a live thriller, is desperate to laugh. Desperate to laugh, because laughter releases the tension. And my job is to make sure the tension is released not through laughter, but through catharsis, through the playing out of the action of the piece, rather than it being diffused by incorrect handling of the material. And so the other kind of thing that I think my training and background brings to this is kind of an eye for, is that going to be accidentally funny? Like, I reckon we might get a laugh out of that. Take it out. So it's a great kind of control of what I think the experience will be, but in the same way that all jokes are only theoretical jokes until you put them in front of an audience. In the same way with this, all frights, all scares are still theoretical scares, and all non-jokes are only non-jokes until no one laughs at them. So, all of these processes, we do our best in the rehearsal room, but the work doesn't exist until we put it in front of an audience, and then we'll understand, and then we'll know how close we got to what we were kind of going for. Yeah.
Nice. So the story of Let the Right One In started as an award-winning novel. It's written by Swedish writer, bear my pronunciation here, John Ajvide Lindqvist.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not bad, yeah.
Nice. I watched it like 3 times on YouTube. Him saying his own name. It was then adapted into a film in 2008, and then another English-speaking version in 2010. And in 2013, the National Theatre of Scotland commissioned Jack Thorne to write a stage version, which is the version that the Court Theatre is putting in front of Christchurch audiences now. So Dan, when you first read a script, what are you looking for?
Maybe it's useful to put some context around this. I first read this script in 2019, when I was the associate director of the theatre and Ross was the artistic director. We were looking for a follow-up show to Misery, and I read it for that, and I said, impossible! This show is unstageable. And then we put it to one side. And then I heard some rumours that it was a possibility, and I looked at it again, and I was like, yes, I was right. It is unstageable. They'll never put it on. And then it rolled round, and it became a thing, and it's like, hello, Daniel. Would you be interested in this? And I was like, oh yes, I've got a concept for how to do it. Which of course I didn't, but one must lie to get jobs. That was the big challenge of this script was how do we actually stage it, because it is more so than being adapted from the novel, it is more adapted from the film. And so it's closer to the film than the novel, but it is also its own thing. There are scenes in the play, there are characters in the play that do not exist in the film. So it is its own thing, but it's closer to the film than it is to the book, and it still carries a lot of the language of film. which is, of course, here's a scene in the bedroom, and this character is now is covered in blood, and now here's another scene in a playground. Here's the same character. They're wearing a different outfit, and they're completely clean. And so the challenge is, how do we... And the play still has those kind of moments in it. It still has some of that language of film, where there's those kind of immediate scene-to-scene transitions that are... so the big challenge for me and for us was, how are we actually going to do that? How are we going to make a set that enables us to be in the woods, in a sweet shop, in a school locker room, in a swimming pool, in 3 different houses, in a school gym. There's so many locations in the whole thing, and so naturally one kind of goes to, oh, we'll just make it blank. We'll just have it empty, and we'll just bring on these kind of indicative items. But then Chris and myself, Chris is my set designer on this. Chris Reddington is my set designer and doing most of the build, well, a lot of the build on this set as well. And he's been kind of my closest collaborator on this project. And we were like, but that's too boring. And so, yeah, our big challenge was, how do we stage it? And so we talked a lot about, before we even started talking about location, we spent a lot of time talking about theme, which sounds like the kind of thing that you're only talking about in a show in regard with your like high school essay on it. But we spent a lot of time talking about theme. And eventually we kind of landed on some things which were kind of the fractured nature of the storytelling, the fact that the story is so ambiguous. There's a real ambiguity between light, between dark, human, vampire, boy, girl. Nothing, it never really sits comfortably. And so eventually we kind of decided that the set would have quite a cubist, kind of expressionist vibe to it. So we would be seeing, which would enable us to kind of see things from different angles. We wouldn't be trapped in it being literal. And we would just kind of move around these shapes and kind of have that work. But then, of course, it also still had to be Sweden. It still had to feel like Sweden. It still had to feel like cold. So it was an enormous challenge. We built 3 models of the set over the process. The first one, and Chris is a worker who he makes with his hands. He's not a computer or a drawer guy. So he turns up on day 1 and he's like, bam, there's the model. And it's this massive, beautiful scale set model. And I looked at it and I'm like, Chris, this looks exquisite. And he's like, yeah, well, we'll see how we go. And then we slowly started just on paper trying to stage the show on this first version of the model. And we got stuck about scene 6. We're like, this isn't going to work. And so he was like, that's fine. And he went home and he destroyed it. Whole thing. He kept like 2 ideas from it. He destroyed the whole thing, kept 2 ideas from it, and then he came back and maybe 6 weeks later, new, beautiful model, exquisite. And this time we got just past halfway. And then it's like, what happens now? And he's like, I guess I go home and smash it. And so off he went. He went home, he smashed it, came back, new model. And this one, we got real close. And he's like, I think if I cut this bit out and we chop this bit here, we'll be able to do it. And so he didn't smash that one. He just kind of literally just broke bits, It's
He's a bit of a cowboy.
he's such a cowboy. It's so crazy to watch someone make something so beautiful and then just destroy it in front of you. Because you were like, I can't fit an actor through there. Fair enough. Smash! Yeah. So that was the process of unlocking it. Once we'd worked out how we were actually going to do it, the rest of the text kind of just fell into play. I say that in a very matter-of-fact way. But compared to the challenge of how do you stage this, everything else has been remarkably straightforward.
Can I interrupt for a
you
moment
may.
and ask, how long did that process take?
We started, so I was attached to this project in October last year, and we started that kind of iterations of the set. We started that in January, and the last one was well, Chris has a deadline 3 weeks before rehearsal starts, where he has to provide the set drawings to the workshop. So those were late. But yeah, so what's that? 2 or 3 months? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, pleasure. Yeah.
So that sounds like a very collaborative relationship with Chris. Is that like, because you've got quite an extraordinary creative team beside you. You've got Andrew Todd on sound design, the gorgeous Daniela Salazar on costume, Giles Tanner on lighting, Julian on blood stunts and props. Is that how it usually works when you're in the director's seat?
Depends on the project.
Yep.
But this one I knew, because of the complexity of it, that because usually often with kind of more smaller scale show, or the departments can kind of stay quite separate, and it can just be like a couple of meetings, you're doing your thing, you got it under control, yeah, great, cool, I'll see you at the design meeting kind of thing. But with this, it was very much, we were all like, we've all got to be on top of this well before the actors even turn up. I've never blocked a show before rehearsal starts. It's not a thing I do. I work organically. I work on the floor. I'm like, there's a space there. There's a space. Let's do this. Let's do this. But it's the first time that I sat there with the model and I was like, this person comes in here and they can stand here and then this person will come in here. Like literally through the whole show doing that voice the whole time. The others had to watch me. They hated it. And so Chris began, as I said, in Jan. Same, Daniela was at those meetings, Andrew was at those meetings, because we wanted to make sure that all of the conversations that we were having were all feeding into the same thing. I think this is a really easy show to get wrong, or to have one element just kind of clanging in the side when everyone else is like this. So we all kind of began right from the start. And Julian, Chris, and myself, that's kind of, it's a reunion of the same team that did Titus Andronicus, and so Julian did all the blood and gore effects for Titus for me. I directed it, and Chris did the set design and painting for that as well. So it's kind of, it's a little bit of like get the gang back together as well, which is fun. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So there is a lot of blood, obviously. There's a lot of violence.
Yeah.
But what would you say Let the Right One In is actually about?
Actually, I'd say it's about being a sad loser kid and trying to get out of that. I think, it's the story. Like, there's blood, there's violence, there's a vampire, Like it's supernatural, but also at the same time, it's just about a kid that's having a real rough time of it, and who sees a way out of that, and kind of takes it. And it's fast to decide if that's a good choice for him or if that's a bad choice for him. And my job, as I've seen it, is to make sure that I don't put my thumb on the scales. I mean, I have my personal kind of opinions as to whether that's a good choice or a bad choice for him. But with the production, I've done my best to let it sit neutrally and let the audience decide for themselves whether they think that was best for him or possibly worst for him. That's kind of my hope. But yeah, it's about outsiders. It's about finding a friend. It's about the kind of desperate, aching sadness of being like a teenage kid that just nothing seems to work for. Yeah. With murders.
So, moving to the actors now,
Yeah.
we have, you've got a very strong, experienced and capable cast of actors.
Yeah.
Sarah Judd and Bruno Hart are playing the two youngsters, supported by some absolute stalwarts of the Court Theatre company. What have been the biggest challenges for the actors so far?
Get that man out of here. Biggest challenge for... I think this is a deceptive script. It's on the page, it seems very thin. And that was that was my first mistake about this piece, is looking at the text. There's kind of pages where it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll go. Okay. Like, there are big sections where it's supernaturalistic and it's just kind of sitting in that kind of world. And my initial take on it was that this is a story about being sad and it's punctuated by moments of supernatural horror and violence. But the big challenge has actually been, as we mine and as we read and as we work and as we refine, is actually going, whoa, hang on a second. Does this refer to this? Are they talking... oh no, another theme that we didn't even kind of find at all that now we've kind of got to honour. And I mean, Jack Thorne is a very clever writer, so maybe that was my foolishness and not kind of seeing that on the first read, but it is a much more sophisticated piece of text than our first take, and that the naturalism that with which you perform it does not actually match the complexity of the ideas that is exploring. And so that has been, I think, the big challenge, is going, you're only saying 2 words. You're only saying 3 words. You're having this very awkward kind of exchange. Let's talk about everything that's under the water in the iceberg of this metaphor. Yeah, So that's, I think, has been the big challenge, is kind of the mismatch and kind of trying to find and explore that. Fortunately, I'm gifted with an extremely able and skilled cast who have been extraordinary.
Awesome. So obviously there's a lot going on. It's quite gritty.
Yeah.
How do you create an environment where the actors feel safe to go to those places, where you need them to go?
Yeah. I'm just a big dum-dum. I have several techniques. One of them is pretend to be the stupidest person in the room, and just be like, would it be weird if you did something like that? I don't know. Does that even work? I'll often do that, be non-confront, kind of, and make the request seem as, make what is often quite a high stakes request in a very low stakes way to ask for it. Like, is that weird? Is that, and let them kind of make the decision. I'll model a terrible way of saying the line. The worst thing a director can do is be like, say the line like this. Actors hate it. It sticks them in doing an impression. It also limits their ability to your ability, which is a terrible idea. That's such a limiting force. So I'll do the opposite. I'll give a terrible line reading. I'll be like, and what if you're like, come in and you're like, oh, this is really bad, and give it that kind of, oh, it's really bad energy. And I want them to give that's to kind of get the flavour underneath it, but never to deliver it like that. So do that, and I also just try to. It's really important that the experience of the actors coming to work isn't the experience of the characters in the play, and so, as well as in kind of, I guess I kind of set the tone for the room. So I try to keep it kind of light and playful and whatnot, but also all of our violence is done with our fight coordinator, and all of the intimacy is done with the intimacy coordinator, and so everyone has a really strong and clear idea of what it is they're going to do at work today. Try to operate on no surprises.
Interrupt then.
Yeah.
How old are the two young actors? Because they're only 12 or 13 in the story, aren't they?
Yeah, so in the original book they're like 12, 13, and I think every time you adapt into a different medium that's pushed up, it's easy to write those kind of terrible things happening to an imaginary 12 and 13-year-old, and then when we went to the film, they aged up because suddenly you realise, man, I don't know if I want to traumatize this 12 or 13-year-old. And again, with this, we're kind of setting them in the play. We're setting them at kind of 16 each.
But how old are they?
Is in real life, I have no idea. I don't know. It would be a gentleman never asks. But they are early 20s. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Has your over the years, has your directing process changed much?
Yes. Yes, 100%. I used to be a puppeteer. And that comes, I used to be like, okay, come in, stand there, go, good, and then stand there and then turn that way and look at that, great, oh, that's so good, yes, you're doing exactly how I would do it, good, and say this like this, oh yeah, that's good. Used to be 100% like that. Now I'm much more likely to be like, so it'd be good if you came in that entrance, and probably end up about there. What do you got? Let's have a look at it. And I'll be like that. I trust actors much more, and I think that's due to, hopefully without sounding like an asshole, I've done this. I've done it a lot, and I don't feel I need to prove anything in the room anymore. So I'm not afraid of it not being exactly how I imagine it. So I'm happy to for it to be more collaborative, for other people to feed into it, for it to hopefully be a bigger, richer, more nuanced piece of work than just me. When I first started out, I had a very strong vision, and I knew what I wanted, But I only trusted that. And so if people were outside of that, I'll be like, no, that's wrong. What you're doing is wrong. It needs to be this, because this is what I want, and I know this will work. But one of the big things I guess I learnt was it cannot be how I imagine it, and it can still be good. And so now I more see my job as being just make sure it sits at a level of quality, and that everyone's still in the same show, but with all these other perspectives from all the other practicing artists who are working on the show is feeding into the cohesive whole, and my vision is what is pushing all those together rather than trying to push all those into my vision for it. Yeah. So I think I'm just more chill and cool. Probably. If I had to put it in 2 words.
I just have a wee time check. How are we tracking?
6:43.
Not even close.
All right.
Not even close.
So, why do you think that we as humans continue returning to these sort of dark stories? These sort of...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of things. I think our monsters reflect the times that we live in, and we kind of create these other things to talk about the fears of our time. So I think that's a big one for supernatural kind of things. I think that's why we keep coming back to monster stories, to Beowulf, to Grendel, to those kind of stories, because they're about something that we as a society, we're like, we can't control this, we can't hold this. There's a real uncomfortable note that runs through this show, which is about coercion and sex with minors, and that is kind of, and I think that is a huge kind of thing that as a culture we are having to come to grips with, the fact that our world is seemingly littered with that. Yeah, and it's through our stories that we are able to kind of confront our demons in a safe way that is kind of hopefully cathartic and kind of works us through something. I think that's why we come back to supernatural, and I think we come to horror, to thriller, to frightening pieces of work, to them and feel alive, like, because it's good to be reminded of the kind of the lifting of the hackles on the back of the neck that indicates that the bear is nearby. Like, you know, it's, I don't know, it's as invigorating to the body, to the nervous system, as having a night out laughing is to go, oh man, it's in me. Oh, I don't know where to put this. Like, it's, yeah, I think it's a visceral experience that is as exciting to share safely in a room with other people as, we all know, a comedy. When was the last time you laughed watching something on TV kind of by yourself versus crammed in a room with just everyone like that? Everything's 10 times, 100 times funnier. So I think that's in this venue, and this live genre. I think that's why we come back to it. It's the big things of being a person, right? Have a good time, avoid a bad time, but experience do a dry run on a bad time. Like, what if I can kind of simulate it? Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, lovely.
That was a hard question. I was fumbling my way through that one, but I think the plane landed, but it might have scraped the ground.
No, that's good. And now, after spending so much time in the world of Let the Right One In, is there an image or an idea that is lingering with you?
Yeah, I just think of two. I put it on the poster. It's like it's two lonely, cold kids out in the snow by themselves, and they're both very different. They're both little weirdos in their own kind of unique way, and they're out in the cold, and all they've got is each other, and so they stand there and they hold hands, and that is that moment is referenced in the show. It's not literally like that, but that's what I kind of think of is these two are out for their own very different reasons. They're very outside of everything else that's going on, and what a pleasure and what a joy and what a lifeline to, when you're out in the cold, to find someone else.
We'll go to the audience in a moment, but I would love to know what you are most excited about for audiences to come and experience in this production.
I'm really excited about the slingshotting effect of this piece, because there are moments where it is very deliberately confronting in terms of staged simulated violence, and then on the flip side of that, there are some moments that are so achingly sweet and kind of heart-rending, they break my heart when I watch them. I'm just like, and I'm only in the rehearsal room and we haven't put the fake snow in, you know? Like, it's not even snowing behind them. And I'm like, oh, this is really beautiful. And the piece, I think, does that quite successfully, is that it hits so hard, it does the hammer, and then it goes, and you're like, oh, and it jumps kind of back and forward. And so what I'm excited to see is how well we've threaded that needle, because that's quite a line to walk without. And I'm also interested to see whether people see the ending as being positive or negative, because I think there's a strong argument either way, and as I said, my attempt has been to not thumb the scales and say, well, I think it's this. So I'm very interested in whether people leave going, that was the ending was beautiful, and it was the best thing that could happen for them, or if they will go, the ending is terrible, and that is doom. And as I said, I think there's a good case either way.
Fantastic.
So that's what I'm excited about. The slingshotting and the ending, how that kind of
Great.
how people respond to that. Yeah.
Hopefully a juicy third act in the foyer of discussion.
Yeah. I mean, what else can you hope for, right? Like, I think as a maker, like the worst kind of response to your work is people come out, walk straight out the door. How did you find that? Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I'd rather you hated it. I'd rather you walked out going, I found that offensive.
Yeah.
Like, that tells me I'm doing something. Then like, oh, yeah, it was alright.
Yeah.
It's good.
Lovely.
3-star review, you know? Yeah.
Sorry, sticking with audience reaction.
Yes.
At the very start of your discussion, you mentioned the delineation between comedy and taking out bits that laugh. As a director, would you be offended if the audience laughed at parts of this show?
Oh, they will. There are bits that are deliberate. There are jokes, or as much as this show has jokes, there are bits that are very much like, that's genuinely funny. So hopefully that acts as a bit of a valve. But people will react how people will react. I went and saw Robert Eggers' The Witch, which in a packed theatre when it had first come out in New Zealand, and that was one of the most unsettling films I've ever seen. I never knew what was going to happen. I felt uncomfortable the whole time, and I spent most of it kind of like this and not breathing. And heaps of people spent heaps of it laughing. And I was like, what is wrong with you? But laughter in this sort of thing, unless it's like that looks dumb. Like, that doesn't look like what they're trying to make it look like. That's the problem. That's what I need to remove, right? But if people are laughing and it is cohesive and it seems like it's itself and it is an accurate representation of what we're trying to represent, if people laugh at it, my guess is that is a laugh of, I am uncomfortable. And I don't know what to do with this energy that is inside me. So I'll do the thing that usually removes the uncomfortable feeling, which is I'll giggle. And so people will laugh, and I don't hold that against them. I just think they're wrong. Yeah, but no, I don't judge people how, you know, I'll make the thing and I'll shape it as best I can, but ultimately it's not for me to decide how people meet that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
When you were growing up, did you clown around so you were called a clown and that's why you became a clown?
Did I clown around? Weirdly enough, not really. No. I was not a clownish child. I was a reader. Through school I thought I was an actor. And then in the arrogance of a 17-year-old, I was like, I'm already so good at acting, I don't need to go to acting school. What I don't have is physical skills. So I was like, I'll go to clown school and I'll learn how to do a flip and I'll learn how to juggle, and that will round me out. So that was kind of the thought process behind it. Yeah, not so much like... Not like, my life has never been, it's been...
Lovely.
Do you ever do a test audience?
We're one and done on this one. So yeah, there'll be a final dress, and we'll see how it kind of hits. We've been bringing, obviously the kind of the wider theatre staff kind of come in as we get to the points where we're like, it's now kind of showable. So people will kind of come in. The designers will turn up occasionally to be like, what have you done with it? And so we can get kind of a read from people kind of gently feeding into it. But in terms of that kind of culture of previews, where it's like, we did a week of shows in front of an audience and we decided this bit isn't working, so we'll change it. It's not really a kind of a thing that we have the time luxury for. Yeah. So.
Is the show R-rated?
It's not R-rated, but I think it's recommended for 16 and up. Yep. I think, I don't know, people know their own kids. My stepdaughters are coming. They're 16 and 14. But I'll tell them what it's going to be.
I'm sure there's some good lessons in there.
Yeah, and there are. The other thing is that like, you kind of go one way or the other with when it's live, like there's only a certain degree of fidelity that we can create these effects with live because we're doing them live. So we don't have the ability to cut away from things and then to cut back with a new kind of thing. And so I think either the fact that it's happening in the room with you is very confronting, or you go, how are they doing that? Like, wow, that's a lot of blood. Where is the blood coming from? Like, there kind of becomes a level of appreciation of the stagecraft behind it, and which I think for some people will be a useful layer of disengagement to kind of be able to go, oh, well, it's not, I mean, they didn't actually cut an actor's throat. That's insane. There can't be that many actors that would sign up for that.
You'll be surprised.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Next one online, sorry, you that one instead, that's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's so I'll talk through that with them, but I don't know.
Lovely.
Will there be blood splatter in the first row?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there is, the question was, is there blood spatter in the front row? There are some things right at the front that we have yet. So we're just installing the set at the moment, and once that's in, a couple of things that engineer some effects will be able to be put in, and then we will find out. Yeah, we're trying to make sure that it isn't a like poncho requirement for the first. For the first, yeah, those ones are that's premium. It's I mean it seems like a funny question, but it is genuinely something that we are kind of trying to control at the moment, because we haven't quite. Anyway, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know everything. I can keep some things to myself.
Dan, how easy is it to control the rehearsal so that you're ready to go? Like it's all the processes and that when you're ready to go on the night.
It's been I've done quite a lot of big shows for court. Misery was a big show. Murder on the Orient Express was a big show. Lots of moving parts, lots of actors, lots of complexity. Both of those pieces. This is the biggest show I've worked on, by far, cross departments, because on some of them it's like this department is going to have to work very hard on this show, but everyone else it's just kind of this show. Everyone is kind of having a crank, and so my job has been to try and make sure there are no surprises between departments, and that if there's a question mark over something, we know that it's still a question mark, and we have a vague idea when that will kind of try to resolve. I'm kind of like we finish rehearsing, and then I kind of run around the building going like, how's this going? And then and down to the set and be like, what's happening with this? We've got real questions about that, and kind of just going all over the place trying to make sure that everything's going to, by the time we get in that room, that we have the minimum amount of question marks as possible. But still, there's and this is no surprise because all shows kind of end this way. It ends there's quite a crescendo at the end. Let's just say that there's a crescendo, and we still don't quite know how that will happen. We have an idea, and we have a lot of components, but until we're actually in there with all the moving parts, until we're able to, it's one of those things that it's like, if you look at it without the lights on it, it doesn't look like anything. And the light's always the very last component to add, and we're kind of asking them to do a lot. So, yeah, there's a lot of kind of question marks. So my job is kind of to minimize question marks and keep people jollied along that, yes, I know there's a question mark, we all know there's a question mark, but we're just going to kind of behave with grace towards each other until that kind of resolves. And I think the big thing for me through this has just been kind of letting people, this is interesting, letting people feel slightly uncomfortable with the fact that there isn't an answer yet, and that an answer will resolve, the tension will release, but we don't have it yet. But it'll get there as we go through the process. We're trying to not solve problems before they become problems is a big thing I keep saying. It's not so that's just an imaginary problem. Stop trying to solve it. When it turns up, we'll solve it. So yeah, I hope that, yeah, that's how we've been kind of trying to hold everything together. Yeah.
Thank you. Let the Right One In opens on Saturday the 23rd of May. I'm sure all the questions will have been answered by then.
They have to be, that's my job.
I'd also like to mention that the Canterbury Film Society is actually hosting a screening of the 2008 Let the Right One In film at the Art Gallery next Monday. If you're interested in that, you can check that out.
Should we see it, Dan?
Pardon me?
Should we see it before we come?
Quite different, to be honest. Quite different. I'm not a homework director. I hate homework. I'm always like, if everything should be in the script, I should just be able to get everything out of the script. But I was having difficulty with this one. I was like, I'll go watch the film. I watched the film and I'm like, oh, I'm not doing any of that. So I don't think it's I mean, it's the same, approximately the same narrative. So it'll tell you the story of it, but I don't think it will. I don't think it'll ruin your experience of seeing what the live version does. Yeah. So, dealer's choice.
Yeah. So there's two actually versions of the movie. There's called Let the Right One In and Let Me In. There's
Yes,
two versions,
correct.
so
Yeah, there's
Let
the
Me In and
Swedish,
Right
the
One In.
original Swedish version, and then the English version. which
Yeah,
came out
American
2020.
remake. Yeah.
So I'd just like to say again a huge thank you to the Friends of the Court for hosting this event. It's it's been such a fantastic night. Thank you, Dan. Very rich. I really genuinely cannot wait to see this production. And if we could all give Dan Bain a big round of applause. Please.